Welcome to the annual meeting of the shareholders of Thermal Energy International. My name is John Kelly and I am chair of the board of directors, and I will be chairing the meeting today. This is Debbie Weinstein to my far left, and Debbie is legal counsel and secretary of the corporation and will act as secretary of the meeting. I would like to include each of the members of management and the board. I will not do introductions at this point. I think you'll recognize all of them. Will Overhead is not here, as he is in Toronto waiting for his next scheduled flight, which they told him will be Wednesday at 8 a.m. I declare the meeting to be regularly called and properly constituted for the transaction of business. Before proceeding, I would like to comment on the voting procedure for regular business. As is customary, to expedite this formal portion of the meeting for all annual matters, unless a ballot is demanded on a particular notion, we will proceed to conduct votes by show of hands. While this procedure will assist the handling of the formal matters, it should not discourage any shareholder or proxy holder from speaking in reference to any motion after it has been proposed and seconded. If you wish to speak, you are requested to identify yourself and state whether you are a shareholder or proxy holder. In the interests of fairness to all shareholders, I will ask you to be brief with your questions or remarks, limiting them to matters directly related to the meeting. Later, following the conclusion of the meeting, Julia Shang, Thermal Energy CEO, will provide a presentation on the company's financial performance in fiscal 2018, and our CEO, Bill Crossland, will provide a business update. Following this, shareholders and proxy holders will have the opportunity to ask general questions from the floor. The first item of business is the presentation of the audited financial statements of Thermal Energy for the year ended May 31st, 2018, and the auditor's report. Paper copies or links to electronic copies of the financial statements and auditor's report were delivered in advance to each of the shareholders, and copies are available for inspection at this meeting. I would ask that any questions of the financial statements or auditor's report be postponed until after the formal business of the meeting has been completed. The next item of business to be dealt with is the election of directors. The number of directors currently holding office is 7, and it has been proposed that 6 directors should be elected at this meeting. The following 6 individuals, all of whom are currently directors of the company, were identified in the Management Information Circular that accompanied notice of the meeting for election as directors: William Crossland, John Kelly, William Overhead, Michael Williams, David Spagnolo, and William White. I ask now for a motion to nominate these 6 directors for election to the board. Thank you. Thank you. May I have a seconder? Thank you. Are there any further nominations? As there are no additional nominations, I declare the nominations closed. There are 6 individuals nominated for 6 positions. I now ask for a motion that these nominees be elected as directors of the company. May I have a nomination to that effect? Thank you, Rob. And may I have a seconder? Thank you. A motion has been made and seconded to elect the 6 directors as directors of the company. All in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Withheld, if any. I declare the motion carried. I declare the 6 individuals named to have been elected as directors of the company to hold office until the next annual election of directors or until their successors have been duly elected or appointed. The next item of business is the appointment of auditors. I now ask for a motion that KPMG LLP be appointed as auditors of Thermo to hold office until the close of the next annual meeting of shareholders, and that the directors be authorized to fix their remuneration. May I have a motion to that effect? Thank you, Mark. I have a seconder. Thank you. The motion has been made and seconded to appoint KPMG LLP as auditors of Thermo, and that the shareholders be authorized to fix their remuneration. And I declare this motion carried. I declare KPMG LLP to be duly appointed as Thermo Energy's auditors to hold office until the close of the next annual meeting of shareholders, and that the directors are authorized to fix their remuneration. That concludes the formal business scheduled to come before the meeting. I remind you that there will be a management presentation following this formal portion and an opportunity to ask questions after that. If no one has any other formal business to raise during this part of the meeting, I will entertain a motion to conclude the meeting. May I have a mover? Thank you. And a seconder? Thank you. All those in favor of the termination of the meeting, raise your hand, please. Those withholding that. The motion is carried, and I now declare the formal part of the meeting concluded. Thank you.
So, welcome everyone. Glad you could make it. I'm not sure what the weather's like outside, but I understand it's not that good in Toronto. Will's, one of our directors, is held back by about 24 hours. So I'll just get started. The standard forward-looking statement, there's some statements that we may make that may appear to be forward-looking, and of course there's all kinds of events that could cause those predictions not to come to pass. The year in financial results. As you know, we do have a new CFO. We're very pleased to have Julie Zhang join us again. She was our corporate controller. She left us about 2 years ago, and so when we need a new CFO, we were delighted that Julie was able to come back and join us. Just stand up and take a bow, Julie. So given that this is her first AGM, I'm going to cut her some slack and I'm going to do the financial presentation. But if you have any real difficult, tough questions, ask her after. Okay. So first of all, we'll talk about the fiscal year's revenue and then the first quarter. So you can see fiscal 2018 was a record year by a long shot, $17.4 million. And it's important to note, that we do have, our largest order ever was announced in November of last year, $11 million with Resolute Forest. But even if you backed out the Resolute numbers that are in these, it still would have been a record year for us. Increase of 32% over last year and a compound annual growth rate of 37% since 2015. Now, 2015 was a bad year, particularly a bad year for us, but it's important to highlight, how far we've come over the last 3 years. We talk about gross profit. Gross profit was also a record, increasing 12%. You can see the bottom line, the gross profit decreased to 48%. That gross profit number varies a lot. It's really dependent on not only product mix, but project mix. So the GEM product, as an example, has a fairly standard margin, and it's much higher than heat recovery. Heat recovery has much less so a standard margin. We're doing turnkey projects, so we're really driving to the customer's ROI requirements. So we get whatever we hope we can get. So sometimes it's better, sometimes it's worse. So 48%. Over the last number of years, a quick rule of thumb, I always like to say, it varies year by year by project, but our gross margin is usually around 50%. Our sales are roughly 50% GEM, 50% heat recovery, and our sales are roughly 50% in Europe and 50% North America. Like I said, it varies quite a bit year by year, but over the long term, that's sort of what it's been. Operating expenses. Operating expenses were up about $900,000. But it's important to note about $600,000 of that was what we would call either intentional strategic growth investments that we made in the company or one-time costs related to BEI. So at the beginning of every year, we do our budgets. And we have all kinds of things that we'd like to do to grow the business, add people, extra marketing, different conferences. And at the end of the day, we sort of have to do a bit of a balancing act. We look at our pipeline, we look at the cash flow that we expect for the year, and we sort of, the management team comes to me with their wish list, which usually shows us losing money, and then we sort of scale things back a little bit. So that's very much a managed number. That's that $600,000 in increased expenses was really what we were targeting, was something we made a conscious effort to decide to do for the good long-term benefit of the company. But the important thing is, as a percent of revenue, our expenses continue to go down. So, they went from 52% down to 44%. And if you back out those strategic investments in growth, it was back about 41% of revenue. So EBITDA increased 17%, $600,000. So a little bit less than it was last year. But again, we invested a lot more heavily this year. Largely because we knew where the cash flow was coming, so we were able to invest. And if you add back those discretionary investments, EBITDA could have been 1.2 million. So if we wanted to not grow as quickly, just sort of hunker down and stabilize the company, profitability obviously is going to go up because you're not going to be spending on the future growth. I've talked about this before, but a lot of that is new staff. We grow the business by adding staff. Engineers and salespeople. An engineer will start paying for himself a little bit quicker, but a salesperson, particularly if that salesperson is in a new territory, which is usually where we're hiring people, it's 2 to 3 years really before they're hitting their stride, because we have a long sales cycle. It's a technical sale. They have to learn. It takes them about a year to learn how to sell the product. It takes them another year to sort of get a good pipeline of opportunities in the hopper. So if it was 1.2 million, it would have been about a 64% increase over last year. Net income, $600,000, so up nicely from last year. And again, that $600,000 includes $600,000 in discretionary expenditures. You look at our cash position, very strong, continues to increase year over year, and the same with our working capital. Working capital is up about $1.5 million since 2015. First quarter was a record by a long shot, and again, it's a lot of that will be Resolute. So I was 6.8 million, and it also includes 2 months worth of revenue, boiler room equipment, which we acquired in June, the end of June. So July and August, so it'll be 2 months of boiler room in there as well. Gross profit increased to 46% to 2.2 million. But you can see now that I've always told you we vary a lot quarter by quarter, we vary a lot year by year, but especially quarter by quarter, because a quarter is really influenced by the timing of different projects. So you can see our gross margin there over the last 4 years has been anywhere from 71% to 32%. When it was 71%, that was a quarter probably where we had very little gem business. When it's 32%, that means there's slightly more heat recovery than there was when it was 48%, as an example. And again, same argument. We continue to add people and grow the company. So for the first quarter, expenses were 2.3, but that included about $200,000 of discretionary expenditures. And again, we still see the same trend. We're going from 68% of revenue to 55% of revenue to 34% of revenue and 31% of revenue if you exclude those discretionary expenditures. So that's what we are really targeting and focusing on. Same thing on EBITDA. It was slightly negative. There's a number of things in that first quarter number. One of the reasons the expenses will go up is because there's some things that are variable with revenue. Sales commissions are an example. So if the revenue is higher, the sales commissions are going to be higher. In the first quarter, we'll go back to expenses. In the first quarter, we also had, and we'll talk a little bit more about this, every 2 years, we have a global training conference for basically the entire staff, but mostly sales and engineers. We alternate that between the UK and Canada. This year we had it in the UK. We have a bigger staff. We virtually had everybody there for a week worth of training sessions. The engineers are getting product training and cross training on products that they're not as comfortable with. The salespeople are getting not only product training, but also sales training. And so that was in that number at first quarter as well. So then we get to net income, same thing, you know, a bit of a loss, but it includes $200,000 worth of discretionary expenditures. You look at our cash, up 1.6 million over the last few years, and working capital up 2.2 million over the last few years. So our working capital, our cash positions are very strong. So in summary, we've had consistent yearly and quarterly growth, year-over-year growth, record revenue for fiscal 2018, record revenue for Q1 fiscal 2019, operating expenses and profitability as a percent of revenue continue to improve, and we've got consistent and continued growth in cash balances and working capital. Order book. So it's up again from last year, but again, this number can change a fair bit. You know, as you can probably imagine, these are the numbers that we report when we report our Q1. So they're always in October, about the last week of October. So where we were at this time last year, we're ahead of where we were at this time last year. We've also had about another $1 million worth of orders that have been announced since then, so it's even higher. But of course, last year in early December, we got the Resolute order, so that would have skewed the order book as well. But again, when you look at it over a number of years, it gives some perspective and context, so you can see that it's a good trend. Just to highlight some of these that are in those numbers, $300,000 from a global beverage company. This is a really exciting one that we just press released yesterday. This is a case where they have solar thermal on site. They have a FLU-ACE on site, and they realized we could use the FLU-ACE to supplement the solar thermal and get even more out of both, which is kind of interesting because, you know, longer term, we think going to a broader sustainability market is the way we're going to go, and this is just one way to start doing that. We also got an order from a major petrochemical company for a innovative water and heat recovery project. You know, the FLU-ACE is a condensing heat recovery system, as is this heat sponge, which means they're condensing water out of that flue stream. So they are recovering water, but customers generally don't care about the water because it doesn't make the economics. I remember there was one customer who we had done a number of heat recovery projects for, and they used to like to talk about the water savings. And so I said, well, we should figure out what that water's worth. And it was something like 10 million gallons a year is what they were saving. And that was $10,000, you know, on a multi-million-dollar project. So the economics don't make sense, but there is cases where water is a very tight commodity and the customers really want to save it. So in this case, this petrochemical company has engaged us to develop, based on our FLU-ACE, a water recovery project, which would also cover heat, would also capture heat. But in this case, the primary purpose is water. They're water constrained. They need to conserve water, and so they want us to develop something that will actually condense and recover water from the flue stream. So that's pretty exciting. $1 million heat recovery order from a chemical company. You know, it's every time we do a heat recovery, we're looking for different applications. So this was a new application that obviously in the chemical industry, it's the first time we've done heat recovery in the chemical industry. This is also a corporate account. We had sold this company gem traps many times. We've done lots of gem in the chemical, but not heat recovery. So that was a first. And then a $1.3 million order from a food and beverage company to do a water recovery project. And that doesn't involve FLU-ACE. That's the exciting part. I mean, when we talk about expanding our product line and expanding our capabilities, you don't do a new product with a new customer in a new market. You go where you know. So this is a customer that knows us and trusts us, and we've worked with them. They realize that as a lot of our projects, we're working with water, so we understand water systems. And they said, well, we have a need for recovering water at this one site. Can you do it for us? So we pitched them on it, and we're doing it. So that's how we grow our business, you know, carefully and methodically. A couple others, heat recovery from a Canadian hospital. It's been a long time since we've done a Canadian hospital, but we finally have done a Canadian hospital, done lots of hospitals in the US and the UK. Canada's a little bit more difficult market, but we have 1.2 million in gem orders from a leading chemical manufacturer, food and beverage, and another teaching hospital. So those are more in the past. Okay, so now I talked a little bit about our growth strategy. We do have a 5-year strategic plan on how we're going to grow the business. I talked a little bit about it last year. I want to highlight that again, give you a few more updates on what our current strategy is and where we're at. So as I largely described last year, it really comes in two areas. One is increasing productivity and profitability of the existing business. And the next part is expanding the business. So we're doing different things in both of those areas. And what are we doing? Well, in terms of increasing productivity and profitability, corporate accounts, and it's again something we've talked about before, but that's this ongoing strategy, and we still have lots to do on it, but developing corporate accounts is the first one. The next thing is enhanced marketing. I'm very excited to say that for the first time in the company's history, we have a real professional, dedicated marketing team. Devin Crockett, who's sitting up at front here, joined us about a year ago, and he's in Ottawa. And Liz Fisher joined us in the UK. Both have lots of marketing experience. Devin, comes by it honestly. He's been trained as a graphic artist. Liz was with an agency, a marketing agency. So we have a good combination of skill sets. So we're doing a lot of exciting things in marketing. I'll talk about that later. And internal support systems and tools. Just what can we do to help our team be more efficient and more effective, both the sales people and the engineer. And when it comes to expanding the business, it's new products. We've got an established platform of sales and engineers in both markets. There's not many, there's very few companies that have that. We have great capabilities and technologies. We're looking for other products that are similar to ours, that are complementary to ours, where we have some knowledge that we can then sell to our existing customers. So again, it's not new products in new markets with new customers. You do it incrementally. And then the final thing is growing the team and our global presence and global footprint. And we can do all that. The plan is, in our 5-year plan, to do all of that both organically, do it ourselves, as we have been doing for the last 9 years up until we acquired BEI, but also do it through accretive acquisitions. We think there's lots of little companies out there like us, like BEI, that would be a nice fit. So first of all, corporate accounts. We talked about it a little bit last year. We mentioned at that time we had 3 corporate accounts. We had, I think, another 10 developing. We've got many more now, but so we've increased the number, has doubled. So we've asked all our team members to identify accounts that they think would qualify as a corporate account. And we have criteria on what an appropriate corporate account is. As it says here, twice the number of salespeople are actively engaged and have corporate accounts now than they did last year. It's across a broad sector. We've got a growing pipeline, so our pipeline within our corporate accounts is up 50% since it was at this time last year. And if you exclude Resolute, because Resolute does distort it a little bit, the corporate account revenue, the revenue we generated from these corporate accounts, the accounts we identify as corporate, which we identify them as such within our Salesforce, within our client relationship management software, grew by 20% last year. So it's growing faster than the rest of the business, as would expect, excluding Resolute. Resolute is a corporate account. You put Resolute in there and the number would be even higher. But next part is enhanced marketing. And so to support the sales journey through leveraging the sales effort, there's 5 key areas of marketing that we're focusing on. One is improving shareholder engagement, which I'm sure everybody in this room will appreciate. Update marketing materials and content. Position TEI as a global leader and expert voice. Launch sector-specific marketing initiatives and increase our internal communication. I've often said, one of our great strengths is we're a multinational company, a small multinational company in a bunch of different markets. We have best-in-class product with worldwide application. One of our weaknesses is we're a small multinational company operating in different markets. So we have to figure out ways that both teams can collaborate, can work better together. We can use, if we need resources in North America and we have resources in the UK, how do we share those resources and vice versa? Next is internal support and tools. Again, providing the team more sales support, more tools to allow them to do their job better. We had our global conference in June. We've got monthly Salesforce and regular LinkedIn training that's mandatory for the guys. Cross-engineering resource exchange program, we talked about that. And focused sales management professionals. So we've grown over the last number of years. We've always been constrained a little bit by cash, so we grew conservatively as we could afford it. What we never thought we could afford was a professional sales manager to manage the sales team, because you can't have one guy that's going to do both North America and Europe. It just doesn't work. We're now at a size and scale that we can do that. So we hired a sales manager, an experienced sales manager in the UK, which I think I probably talked about last year because he's been with us about a year. He was a perfect fit. He's spent 20 years in sales, selling capital goods for the most part, because capital goods is a different sale than than operating goods. It's a hunter rather than a farmer, as they say. So he spent 20 years in selling capital goods. He's a German guy that lives in the UK, speaks 5 languages. So when we say the European market is key for us, that's great. And when we're hiring new engineers and salespeople in the UK, we're always looking for other language capabilities because it's key for us to grow in Europe. And the plan is to add a sales manager in North America as well. The team is getting to a size where they can benefit from that support. So again, we see that as a support that we're going to offer the sales team to allow them to sell more. Then we talk about new products. We talked about cogen last year. So the update is, I think last year we'd already received the order. We introduced this in 2016. We got our first order in 2017. In 2018, we have 2 more paid studies. So that's usually the way cogen works. Customer identifies an opportunity, they have to hire an engineering company to actually develop it. Our model is we're not there for the engineering, we're there for the project. But we have 2 studies. In both cases, it's with customers we know. It's customers, they know us and like us, and that's how you get the business. Dryrex is something we've had forever, but never had the time or resources really to focus on it. I used to say, years ago, before we had the brand recognition that we have now with GEM and Fluace, we probably got more inbound calls, unsolicited inbound calls on Dryrex than anything else. We still got lots of inbound calls. We have a lot of people that are interested, but we didn't have any way to capitalize on it. So we've hired an engineer now to focus exclusively on that. We've set up the lab. We had Dryrex test equipment, but it was in storage. We've set up the lab with some space we were able to get adjacent to our Ottawa office. And we have a number of customers that are very interested in getting their material tested and paying us to test it for them, in fact. Boiler room we'll talk more about, but it's a perfect fit. It's an indirect heat recovery versus the direct heat recovery of Fluace. And then sustainability, in the last 6 months, we've had 3 projects announced that I would say are more just outside, expanding our capabilities to more on the sustainability side, not just the heat recovery. And I talked about them. There was a Fluace for water recovery. It's turnkey water recovery, and it's integrating our technologies into renewable energy. And then finally, growing the team and global presence. So you saw in those numbers how there was a large amount of our expenses are from added people. This really highlights it. Everybody that's highlighted there are people that we've added in the last year or 18 months. So it's people who have highlighted since the beginning of fiscal 2018. So all these are the ones. When I show you the $300,000 or $400,000 in discretionary investment in growth, it's for these people. So you can see what it is we're adding. And we're going to do all of that both organically and through accretive acquisitions, which is a nice segue into BEI. So just to highlight what BEI really brings us, it's their suite of indirect contact heat recovery. And so, as you may know, we were a customer of BEI. We used to integrate their product into our projects sometimes. What the indirect does very well is extract high-grade heat cheaply. What the Fluace does very well is extract every last little bit of heat more expensively. So sometimes a customer, depending on the project, will use the Fluace. Sometimes they'll use the heat sponge. Sometimes they'll use both. And so the heat sponge is basically for a steam boiler, indirect heat recovery. And the Sidekick and Rainmaker are their first to market hydronic boiler. So that's a hot water boiler. It's not a steam boiler, it's a hot water boiler. One of the exciting parts of this is that because of the nature of the Fluace, it's expensive, it's custom engineered, it limited us to large industrial and large institutional. So we're missing small industrial, or we're missing small institutional, or we're missing the entire commercial sector. That's not the case with heat sponge. So it opens up that market to us, a much larger market. There's 4 times the number of boilers in the commercial market that there is in the large industrial market. And the order sizes are a little bit smaller. So again, it'll provide a little bit more smoothing of our revenue stream, we hope. In addition, BEI sells a different way than we do. The part that goes direct to the customer is through their reps, manufacturers' reps. And they have 40 manufacturers' reps that specialize on boiler room technologies and service and maintenance across the US and parts of Canada and South America. So that's a new channel for us that we've never tapped in before. A good chunk of their sales are OEM to boiler manufacturers. We've never gone the OEM route. Everything we've done has been retrofit. So that's another market channel for us. And obviously, they have access to thousands of customers at this point in their life cycle. So increased distribution. We have a U.S. base. It wasn't our objective to acquire manufacturing because it is right now. We're a virtual manufacturer. It's a proprietary product, which we get manufactured to our specifications. But these days, it seems like having a base of operations in the U.S. in particular, it's an important market for us, is more important than not. For a long time, we've had some of our customers asking for the GEM product to be sourced in the U.S. Right now, we source it all in the U.K. still. So while we didn't buy BEI in order to have a U.S. base, but one of the side benefits is it's a good base of experienced expertise. They could manufacture the tower, they could finish the GEM traps, they could stock the GEM traps. So there's a lot of synergies there. And as it turns out, their lease is up and they'll be moving to a new facility in 2019. So we can make sure it's a facility that will fit what we need for the long-term growth. And Bruce, it's Bruce Therm. Vince will tell you a little bit more about it, but it's virtually an online, proprietary, scalable, fully automated proposal development function. So his agents and distributors will go on site, they'll enter the key data, and it'll spit out a price and a proposal that then they can then take to their customer. It'll often need some fine tuning after that, but in terms of a preliminary proposal that they go to budget with, it does it immediately, whereas that will take us, several days. And it reduces the overhead, obviously, of the engineering resources that BEI needs to operate with. And Vince did all the coding and design of that himself. So we're looking forward to his experience. So the other thing that BEI brings is a highly experienced sales and engineering expertise, which I think is a perfect segue for me to introduce Vince and ask him to come up and tell you a little bit more about his background, about why he thought TEI was a perfect partner for him, and a little bit more about how this Bruce software helps his business and how it operates. So Vince.
Well, first of all, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and I appreciate the trust in everyone in the acquisition of my company. It's something I started in 2005 with my business partner. We've done very well for ourselves. We also came to the realization that in order for us to really accomplish everything we were capable of accomplishing, we needed to find an acquisition partner. So again, my thanks to everyone in here for the trust and the commitment in us, and really looking forward to the future. I hate to talk about myself if Bill asked me to. So a little bit about myself. I'm a 1992 graduate of the United States Merchant Marine Academy. My undergrad was in marine engineering and naval architecture. Basically, I stepped into my first boiler room at 18 years old in 1987, and I've been pretty much in this industry ever since. I was an officer in the United States Naval Reserve, an engineering officer. I was also a licensed merchant marine officer for 10 years. Maintained my commission in the Navy until actually 2009, before I was basically asked to leave because steam was kind of getting obsolete in the Navy. From a civilian workforce, I have spent a lot of time all boiler industries, and it was fairly unique. Cannon Boiler Works, I was their vice president. I left as their VP of engineered systems. They're an economizer manufacturer. A lot of the background I have with boiler economizers, indirect heat transfer, came from there. Aalborg Industries, I led their industrial water tube boiler group, and we did quite well for ourselves. It was a Danish company, gave me a lot of introduction to the European market, and that's one of the pieces of experience that I wanted to fall back on for the expansion of BEI into the market, and also the realization that I couldn't do it on my own. I needed to partner with someone else to help me. Again, why the acquisition happened. English Boiler and Tube manufactured industrial water tube boilers, and Triad Boiler Systems was a commercial manufacturer, and it was my time with Triad. They manufacture small commercial systems, hot water systems for hospitals, apartment buildings, condominiums. Really kind of gave me the experience in the introduction to the commercial market, which actually led to our development of the Rainmaker product line, which is an extremely unique product. There's really no other company in the world that's making a product like that. So again, the 26 years of boiler experience, I've been in this industry ever since 1987. Again, I developed the Bruce technology. I developed a lot of the designs for our heat exchangers. So I am somewhat biased, but I do arguably believe we have the most advanced indirect contact heat recovery technology in the world. As I was saying, growing BEI, I came to the realization that while we were doing well for ourselves in Pittsburgh as a small company, we did not have anywhere near the resources to be able to take on any kind of an international expansion. We really didn't have any kind of marketing support. Basically, everything that we were generating, our website, our marketing materials, was me. I was in a lot of ways a one-man band, and it was diluting my efforts to be able to take a more strategic approach to the growth of the business. I needed help. Engineering and project development. There's a lot of opportunities out there, but we really couldn't go and capitalize on those opportunities because we didn't have the internal resources to be able to address them even if we wanted to. And access to capital to invest in growth. One of the things I was most proud of with the company is my partner and I basically grew the entire company out of retained earnings. We never had any debt for all practical purposes. We had no debt of any significance. We had no outside investors. My partner and I started this company out of our own pockets. Our first boardroom was a cover on his pool table. So we literally started boardroom equipment with a couple $1,000s. So recognizing that's one way to start a company, but when you start getting into the kind of growth that we're capable of, we needed an acquisition partner. And again, another reason why we seeked out Thermal. No, why did we do it? Again, as Bill had mentioned earlier, we had a long and established relationship with Thermal Energy. When turning over the company that we had started from scratch and we had grown in something we were extremely proud of, we didn't want to just hand it off to anyone. We wanted someone that was going to share our passion for the product and for the industry. And I do believe we have the best in class for indirect contact heat recovery in the world. And again, Thermal Energy shared that with us, so that made it a lot more appealing for me that this is where I wanted the company to go. And I should say, not only company, but myself as well. I'm along for the ride here too, so I wanted to be someplace that I was confident in. And a big part of it, and Bill had mentioned about the manufacturing facility, was the commitment to keeping that plant open. BEI wouldn't be where it is today. I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for everyone that was at the plant. And to be blunt, if it would have meant shutting down my plant and all my employees losing their jobs, I wouldn't have accepted the acquisition deal. So Thermal's commitment not only to maintain the plant, but as Bill had mentioned earlier, with some other opportunities with flue ace assembly, tower assembly, maybe some gem truck finishing, not only maintain the plant, but even grow it and add for employment opportunities in that area. That was just kind of the icing on the cake for me. So. And again, going back to being a little bit biased, Bruce is something that I kind of created. But a little bit of the background on Bruce was prior to the start of Boiler Room, I've always written computer code my whole life. It's just something I've done for fun. I had toyed around with some of the other employers that I had about automating some of their coding. There was a lot of things that could be kind of brought into the 21st century. But no one I worked for ever really wanted to listen to me. So when I buried my former partner and I started Boiler Room, and we had no money to be able to hire a sales engineer and realized we were going to need a lot of help fast, was kind of the incentive that I needed to start developing the software. Basically, what Bruce is if you kind of look at the engineering of any one of these heat exchangers, it is a very logical kind of a flow sheet of a progressive series. No reason you couldn't automate it. So what I first started to do was I automated some of the basic heat transfer just to kind of help me out so that I could be more productive. I could kind of optimize my time. Over the years, I realized that there was more and more functions that are involved in this sales cycle that we were able to incorporate into Bruce. So basically what Bruce has allowed us to do is we can go from an initial inquiry from a customer, goes to our website, and that customer being one of our representatives, one of our OEM clients, or even just an end user that is interested in the product, they can key in as basic amount of information as we need, or it has the ability of being very, very complex. You key in that information, and it's a two-step process. Step one is what we call generating a run, where you, in essence, give Bruce a series of inputs. Bruce will process it, and he'll give you an output. We have a database built into Bruce with most of the boiler manufacturers in North America. So Bruce will understand what kind of boiler, what the application, the temperatures, everything that a human, engineer, sales engineer, or estimator would do, Bruce has automated that entire process. So you put in those key inputs, Bruce generates an output. Let's assume that output is satisfactory to the customer. The second step is Bruce will generate a proposal for you. So he'll take those outputs, put it into a typical proposal letter, generate all your heat transfer, your part load scenarios, how the unit's going to operate at not design parameters, all of the commercial terms and conditions, of course. Bruce has been automated to know what kind of drawings to go to a database and pull out certain drawings, certain piping systems. So again, all of the information that a sales engineer, that an estimator would do, of course, generates the price for the equipment so that you can go from an initial inquiry to a fully priced proposal with, on the back end, a lot of the design work that's required for the heat exchanger already pre-engineered and done with zero human interaction. So I can go from an inquiry to a purchase order for all practical purposes with no human interaction, which is, as Bill said, from an overhead standpoint, it allowed us a couple things. Number one, it allowed us to grow quite significantly without the need to bring on additional staff that would be a burden on us. And number two, it allows us to kind of put ourselves in a pricing range with our competition that doesn't have these kind of tools, and be able to park ourselves just under, right at or right under that market price, and realize far more profitability because we have lower overhead to support the product. So it's I'll kind of stop there. I could bore you guys all day long on what Bruce is, but I think that's a general introduction to what Bruce is and some of the things that we have talked about kind of bringing to TEI.
Great. Thanks, Vince. And and you might think, Bruce, that's kind of a funny name, isn't it? Well, the reason is with that proposal, your design sheets, your drawings, your proposal, you get a letter from a guy named Bruce Thurm. And, Vince will see people will call the office saying they want to talk to Bruce Thurm because they have some questions about this proposal. Bruce Thurm is this automated software that's generating this proposal. So that's why it's called Bruce. And he never complains. So he's a model employee, this Bruce Thurm guy. So we talked about our growth strategy. We talked about the key elements of our growth strategy. I want to highlight on how Boiler BEI hits on a lot of those key elements of our growth strategy. Internal support systems and tools, that's Bruce. New products, that's pretty obvious. Growing our team and capabilities, I think that's obvious now with Vince and his team. And growing our global presence. They have a different distribution network in the U.S., parts of Latin America, as well as Canada. So it's a whole new channel for us, and it's a whole new market for us. And then finally, I've touched a little bit on this before, earlier in the presentation, but businesses, we're seeing our customers around the world are getting more and more increase in sustainability. They love the energy efficiency, they love reducing costs and saving money, but there is a greater focus, an increasing focus on sustainability, reducing carbon emissions, and reducing operating costs. And we are getting to the point with our trusted customers where we're able to not just sell them gem or heat recovery, but identify, recommend, and implement the most advantageous sustainability projects. So whether it's whether it's a flue ace, whether it's gem, whether it's a heat sponge, or whether it's something else, that's our capabilities. That's where we set ourselves apart. It's our know-how and our unique combination of know-how and proprietary products. So just to sum up, the highlights: enormous, fast-growing global market, experienced and established North American and European sales and engineering platform, proprietary products sold to leading companies across the world. We have a growing team, global presence and product offerings, and we believe we're poised to continue a strong track record of growth. And that's it. Thank you very much.